Welcome to Good Screenwriting. I'm Trevor Meyer, and today we're going to talk about Alien Covenant. Now, if you haven't seen this movie yet, you're probably not going to get a chance because I just saw it the third weekend that it's been out, and it's already been pulled from over 1,000 theaters. Probably not because of any content, but more because of unfortunate box office performance. I think it had a decent opening weekend, but then the second weekend, I think it drops something like 75%. And by the third weekend, about 1,000 theaters dropped it from their playlist. So that's a real bummer because if you haven't seen it, you should go see it. If you're a fan of the Alien franchise or not, I mean, it's got stuff for everybody. If you're not into gore, if you're not into ickiness, then it's not for you. But if you enjoyed the first Alien and the second Alien and Prometheus, then this is one of the good ones, alright? There are 8 Alien movies if you count the Alien versus Predator movies. This is one of the good ones, alright? I consider there to be 4 good ones and 4 bad ones, alright? So, the 4 good ones are Alien, Aliens, Prometheus, and Alien Covenant. The 4 bad ones are Alien 3, Alien Resurrection, Alien vs. Predator, and Alien vs. Predator Requiem. So, take that into account if you ever decide to go watch this movie. You might have to wait until it comes out on video, who knows. I'm hoping that it at least makes a profit, because the reviews have been good. Critics' reviews are good, the audience reviews are good, and I liked it. So, let's go into some of the details about this movie. This is... Alright, so right off the bat, I'm going to tell you I give it a 4 out of 5. Alright, it's a 4 out of 5. And this is the point where I'm going to start giving away some spoilers. So, if you haven't seen the movie yet, here's your takeaway right now. It's a good movie. If you liked Alien, Aliens, Prometheus, go see this movie, alright? It's one of the good ones, okay? It's one of the better movies I've seen this year, alright? Now, if you're ready for some spoilers, you can go ahead and keep watching. Again, if you haven't seen it, stop the video now, go see it. If you have seen it, let's talk about it, alright? So, what I like about this movie is there are some times when I think that when somebody else takes over a franchise, you know, like Terminator 3 or even, you know, Aliens or something like that. It didn't happen in Aliens, but sometimes when a new person takes over a franchise, they're so reverent to the original source material that they don't want to do anything new, all right? They they just want to recreate the magic of the original. However, when you give it back to the guy who created it, you know, when you put it back in the hands of Ridley Scott, who did the original Alien, he doesn't have to be reverent to his own source material. He's the one who did it, so he can do whatever he wants now. So the fact that he's not checking a bunch of boxes to make sure that this is true to the original is kind of refreshing, you know? He's like, you know what? I don't want to do that. Let's do something else. So, what really makes this movie interesting is that I can tell from watching it that Ridley Scott has very little interest in making another movie about aliens. Alright? This movie is about the synthetics. This movie is about the androids. It's about Michael Fassbender as both Walter and David, okay? Any review you read is going to mention Michael Fassbender's dual performance as Walter and David. David is the villain of the movie. He is the android from Prometheus. And as we find out, spoilers, he is the creator of the xenomorphs, alright? The main villains or creatures of the rest of the Alien series were created by David. All right, and it makes his character from Prometheus even more sinister. Because now I go back to Prometheus, and I always kind of assumed that he was operating under secret orders by Peter Whalen. Now I'm like, he was probably already on his own agenda by that point. He probably was not following the orders of Peter Whalen, because what would that why would that help? All right? Peter Whalen wants to meet the engineers and extend his life. What does that have to do with David spiking Charlie's drink with this black alien goo, turning him into some kind of hybrid and giving birth to the squid that mates with the engineer and creates the deacon, the kind of primitive xenomorph? Why would any of that help Peter Whalen's mission? I don't think it would. I think David was just acting alone, which is really creepy because he's so peaceful and calm and benevolent and helpful, and yet he's a total sociopath. You know, he just it's almost like he doesn't even have an agenda. He just puts this potentially deadly black goo in someone's drink just to see what would happen. He's like, bloop, just dab his finger in the black goo and drop it into someone's drink and give it to him with a smile and say, let's see what happens. He's just a creator for the sake of creating. And creation is a major theme of both Prometheus and Alien Covenant. And what's kind of cool is they've now established a chain. The implication in the Alien universe now is that God created the engineers created humans, humans created androids, and an android created the xenomorphs. So, as a causal link of creation, the xenomorphs are like the grandchildren of humanity. Humanity created androids. Well, what's the next step beyond the androids? What do androids create? Androids create these creatures. All right, so that just I don't know, it makes the whole thing really interesting because, like I said, this is a movie that's way more fascinated with the androids than the aliens, all right? I can tell that that's what Ridley Scott really wanted to make a movie about because the opening scene is the creation of David, all right? And we finally get some justification for why they cast Guy Pearce as Peter Whalen because, he's a dude like in his 40s probably, playing a guy in his 90s. And I'm like, why? Why did they cast him in Prometheus? Why not get an actual, guy in his 90s to play Peter Whalen? And now we get some justification for that because in the opening scene of Alien Covenant, we see Guy Pearce aged up a little bit, but recognizable as Guy Pearce. He's much younger than he was in Prometheus. So, it's the creation of David, and David questions his maker. He says, basically, you created me, but you're gonna die. I'm not gonna die, and he starts thinking about what he can create, and way later down the line, presumably, I don't know what it would be, like 50, 60, 70 years later, you got the events of Prometheus, and this movie takes place 10 years after Prometheus. And he basically, at the end of Prometheus, he and Shaw leave LV-223 with an engineer ship. Shaw goes into cryosleep. And now she also repairs David. This is something that's covered in the prologue. I didn't even think about this, but there might be a little bit of a question whoa, wait a minute, how did David get all back together. I guess they do explain it in the movie, but uh, he was decapitated at the end of Prometheus. So if you look at the little prologue on YouTube, the Alien Covenant prologue, there's a little bonus scene that connects Prometheus to Alien Covenant, and it makes the transition a little bit smoother between the two. So basically, what happened in the backstory of Alien Covenant, is that David actually killed Shaw on the way and dropped a whole bunch of those canisters of black goo onto the engineer's homeworld to create a whole bunch of hybrids. And we know that the xenomorph becomes a hybrid of whatever host it goes into. So, uh, the cross between the squid and the engineer became the deacon. And the cross between a face hugger and a human creates the xenomorph. All right? So he drops this black goo on the whole engineering homeworld and creates a whole bunch of brand new species because the black goo infects every animal. All right? All non-botanical life, all non-plant life. All right? So every kind of animal is infected by this stuff, and it creates a whole bunch of new species, and none of which are satisfying to David. So he experiments. He plays around with different combinations of creatures until he finds what he calls the perfect organism, which is, ooh, I love that. It's a nod back to Ash's line from the original Alien. And he creates the perfect organism, and he's got these eggs. Now, we don't get to see these eggs until Act 3, end of the movie. So, what's happening up until that point, up until the big reveal? The crew of the Covenant is carrying something like 2,000 passengers who are going to be colonists to this new world. And it is a new world. It's a world that they didn't mention in any of the other Alien movies that I'm aware of. I can't remember what the place is called that they're going to, but it's got an O in the name and a G. It's not anything like LV-426 or Earth or Furiosa or anything like that, or Fury, whatever. That prison planet, I don't know. But it's a new planet, and they're heading there for a colony. And they run into some issues along the way, as usual. I mean, do these people ever wake up when they're supposed to? All right. In Alien, they wake up early. In Aliens, she wakes up a lot later than she thought she would. And now they wake up early because their ship is damaged. So they have to... they're not answering a distress call. It's not like Alien. It's a little bit different. It's I like what they did here. Somebody is humming a song, and they hear the song through a transmission. All right, and it's one of the characters on the Covenant who recognizes the song as a John Denver song, and he starts singing along with it, and he fills in the missing notes, and it fits the pattern. And he's like, "That's John Denver, man." So they go to this planet, which is the engineering homeworld, where they were receiving that signal from, and they're exploring, and they're like, "This is a lot like Earth. I mean, there's wheat, but there's no animals, no, people. What's going on here?" And a couple of them get infected with these little black spores that came from the black goo. All right. One of them, it goes into his ear, and another one, it goes up his nose. Because these people aren't wearing freaking space helmets. I understand they have to move the plot forward and all that, but I don't know. Like, they should be wearing space helmets. I mean, come on. This is exactly why they should be wearing spacesuits. Come on. I know the air is breathable, but leave your helmets on, please, people. All right? So these are people who don't understand that they're in a horror movie. Isn't that frustrating when you don't know what genre of a movie you're in? Stranger than fiction. All right. So what I like, though, is they get infected by these things, and it happens pretty quickly, like within a few scenes, the gestation period of whatever's going on inside of them, uh, it goes bad pretty fast. And this is an R-rated movie, man. This is hard R. This is alien territory here. All right. So Prometheus was riding that line between PG-13 and R, and eventually landed on R. This is not on the line, man. This is way over the line. Okay. So it's one of my favorite shots in the movie because it's beautiful in a scary, terrifying way. All right. So um, you've seen parts of it in the trailer where there's a dude who's infected sitting on a doctor's table, in like an ER type room, or an examination room, and he's not wearing a shirt, so you can see his bare back, and he's pale. He looks like a zombie by this point because I don't even know if he's alive. He's like this shell for this creature that's living inside of him, and he's just shaking. He's having seizures or whatever, and there's something that starts digging through his back from the inside, and these spikes pop out, and there's it's just this one shot that's like it's gruesome and it's horrifying, and beautiful in the same way, like just in how it's shot. It's all in one shot where this creature uh, uh, comes out of his back and spills to the floor, and at the same time he just goes limp, like he's got no spine, because he probably doesn't at that point. Uh, and he just like flops over backward onto the table as this thing falls out of him, and there's like just a gallon of blood, a gallon of blood just splashes on the floor, and it's just this one like shot that's like, again, it's disgusting, but it's actually like the way the cinematography of it is actually kind of beautiful in this weird, creepy way. Um, and then the other guy who's infected, he actually just like barfs it up. It's again disgusting and horrifying, and that's why it works as a horror movie. I think like he's like coughing up blood and stuff. All of a sudden, this serpent thing just like bleh, comes out of his mouth. And it's dark and it's nighttime and it's not well lit, and it's like all of a sudden this thing comes out of his mouth. It's like, whoa, Jesus, what was that? And what I'm liking about that is that if you go back to the original Alien, there was the chest burster, which punches out of a dude's chest, and that became the go-to for the rest of the series. They always pop out of the chest. That's the thing, because it's iconic. But Ridley Scott, he's like going back to the original concept, and he's like, look. It's all good and everything to be reverent to the original movie that way, but look, if you're being original, this thing would not always go through the chest. All right, they repeat that because it's an iconic image, but the idea where this all started is that there's an alien creature inside of you, and it's just trying to get out. It'll take whatever path is convenient. So. You got one coming out of the back, one coming out of the mouth, and I can imagine all kinds of horrifying ways for this thing to burst out of people. It could, pop out of someone's collarbone or shoulder, like they have a second head next to their head, or, it could, pop out of the top of their head or their arm or their foot or something like that. Like it could come out of their leg. Like, the fact that, like, it's always a chest burster. It always pops out of the chest as a reference to the first movie. Ridley Scott is like, let's go back to the spirit of it and not maybe take it so literally. All right? Go back to what the idea behind the chest burster was, which is, we call it a chest burster because it always does that, but it should really be able to come out of anywhere. And, like, they should be creative in their horror, because it is scary. It is scary and gross and weird, and it's not for everybody. But the fact that it was genuinely terrifying is, I think, what made it work. So I was really a fan of that. So now that's what's going on. But, like, okay, these creatures come out and they kill a few people, and then they disappear for like a really long time. and they're not really that important to the story. These oh, and it's not a chest burster. It's not a xenomorph. It's a neomorph, and you've seen it in some of the promotional images and stuff like that. That's the thing that's popping out of these people because the xenomorph doesn't exist yet, but they needed kind of a villain for the movie for the that section of it. So these things kill a few people, but not that's not the focus. Like they disappear for a while, like for a long time. They're not on camera. What we're occupied with in the middle space of the movie is they find David and they just kind of hang out with David and have discussions about creation and philosophy and stuff like that. And the reason why I can tell that Ridley Scott has no interest whatsoever in making an alien movie, and he's all about the androids now and artificial intelligence, is that he spends a lot of time just hanging out with David and Walter. It's just David and Walter talking to each other and expressing creativity, learning creativity, because Walter is the upgraded model, and he's been changed a little bit because he's not allowed to create. David is allowed to be creative. Walter is not. Walter is more robot-like because people found the David model too disturbing. So, uh, but the fact that this is a movie that'll, uh, do a 5-minute scene where David teaches Walter how to play the flute, that tells you what Ridley Scott really wants to make a movie about, and that's androids being people. All right, androids uh, talking about life and creation and stuff like that. So you get the sense the whole time that David is one creepy dude, and it's a great performance. Both performances by Michael Fassbender, because David has an English accent and Walter has an American accent, and that's really the only difference between them. And there's a reason for that later on, because eventually David reveals to the ship's captain that he created these eggs, and the the face hugger jumps out of the egg, grabs onto the captain, and then the chest burster comes out, and then the xenomorph looks weird though. Like the chest burster looks weird because um, we're told in the credits and by Ridley Scott that this really is the xenomorph. It's not some other creature. So all those fan theories that this is some different kind of species doesn't seem to be true. And yet, this chest burster is a little bit off. There's something wrong with it. Because it's not like a larva. It's not like a serpent, this little fat little baby xenomorph. It comes out as a miniaturized version of a full-grown xenomorph. All right? It's like this 12-inch tall xenomorph, fully grown, but like tiny. So the way the way I describe it is, imagine if a pregnant woman gives birth in the delivery room to a teeny tiny full grown man. You know that this is it's a 12-inch dude with a beard, and he's fully grown, but he's tiny. That's what this xenomorph is like. The chest burster comes out, and it's just a tiny xenomorph, which is not what the chest burster is supposed to look like. It's supposed to look like this little, uh, slug thing. All right, so that was a little weird. I didn't really like that, but someone suggested to me that maybe there's one other link in the chain that's missing, and that it's not quite full circle yet, because these eggs did not come from a queen. These eggs were created by David. All right, so if you really think about it, these eggs give birth to the facehugger, which creates the chest burster, which grows into a xenomorph, a warrior alien. Now, if at some point a queen is born, it would give birth to a slightly different egg than the one that David created. I think. The way that these hybrids work, I think that the queen would give birth to a slightly different egg, which would have a slightly different face hugger, which would produce a slightly different chestburster and warrior alien. So we may be just one link in the chain away from the final version, which is the queen. The queen has to be hatched or born first to lay the final version of the egg, because these eggs are sort of artificial, created by David. So David has some evil agenda, of course, and he wants to create life. He wants to be the creator of the next generation, which is these xenomorphs. And what he does is he actually creates these things and then lets them run rampant, and he gets into a fight with Walter because Walter realizes what he's up to and tries to stop him, and you got good android versus bad android, and they're fighting to the death. All right? There can be only one. So they fight to the death, and then they cut away, of course, and I knew something was suspicious when they did that. And then Walter is the lone survivor. He came out on top. The good guy won. And I'm thinking, interesting, because we didn't see him kill David, did we? All right? So he gets on the ship. They escape from the planet. You got that scene from the trailer where the xenomorph is trying to punch through the window with his face. They killed that one pretty easily, and I'm like, well, that was anticlimactic. And then, of course, that's not the end. They're in space. There's another xenomorph on the ship, and it's chasing them around. All right? They blow that one out the airlock. Again, I'm like, all right, we've seen that before. That's kind of anticlimactic, too. We got a couple of survivors. This ending is way too happy. They can't be like, wow, what a crazy adventure we were just on. All right? And then comes the ending, all right, where they kind of redeem themselves. And I saw it coming. Doesn't really matter because it was the best ending for the movie. Walter, let's say Walter, is putting the people back into cryosleep for their journey to this new colony planet. And he's got 2,000 colonists on board. Something like that, 2,000, I think. And Walter is putting them to sleep and say, you know what, when you wake up, we'll be at our destination. And then after after the main character is locked into this, cryotube and she can't get out, then Walter reveals himself to be David. And it's like, oh boy, oh Jesus, you're all in cryosleep, and the only thing awake on this ship is David, the creator of the xenomorphs. And the movie ends with him going into this storage facility on the ship where they have a bunch of human embryos, because they have a bunch of male and female colonists, but they also have these human embryos because they want to create a whole new colony on this new planet. And he opens up this drawer with these little human embryos, and he actually regurgitates a couple of teeny tiny face hugger embryos, and they're these little round, they're about the size of chicken eggs, but they're transparent, and you can see these teeny tiny face huggers in there. And he just regurgitates a couple of these little eggs and puts them in the little embryo drawer and slides it back in, and just kind of goes back to roaming the ship, and he leaves a log. I think he records a log entry at the end of the movie, saying that there are 2,000 colonists on board and they're on their way to this colony planet, and that's how the movie ends. And I'm like, oh my god, like they went Empire Strikes Back with it. I mean, like we thought like there probably aren't going to be any survivors. Like that's kind of the crazy thing now, is that the villain has become the lone survivor. It's weird because In the first four movies, it's always Ripley. Ripley always is the one who makes it out. Ripley's in everything. And what they've done now with like Prometheus and Alien Covenant is they've killed off all of the human characters, and the only survivor of each movie is David. And he's the bad guy, all right? So it'd be like, instead of Ripley surviving, if Ash survived, and Ash was the character who survived the second Alien, the Aliens movie, that they kill off everybody in Prometheus and they kill off everybody in Alien Covenant, presumably. I mean, they might wake up, they might not, but they're in the hands of the villain now. And the lone survivor of both Prometheus and Alien Covenant is David. And he's a sinister, sociopathic android who's, like I said, so peaceful, so calm, and so benevolent. And yet he's a total sociopath and doesn't care at all about the people that die he's just like, you know what? I want to create some aliens. I'm gonna create the perfect organism, and I'm just gonna. I mean, obviously, I'm gonna have to kill a bunch of people to do it, and that's okay. He just doesn't care. He doesn't care at all that he wiped out an entire planet full of engineers. He doesn't care that he's killing a whole bunch of humans. He has no sinister motivations, really. He just says, I want to create some life, and I'm gonna have to kill some people to do it. Oh well. He's just like, he's so calm and happy about it. It's great. It kind of reminds me of the show Gotham, where the Penguin character, Oswald Cobblepot, his go-to thing is like his solution for every problem is to just kill whoever he's talking to. Like if he doesn't have a pair of shoes, if he's walking around barefoot, he'll run into a guy and say, "Hey, what size shoes do you wear?" And they'll say, I'm size 10. And he's like, what a coincidence, so am I. And he kills the guy and takes his shoes, because that's just the most logical solution to his problem. If he needs anything, he'll just kill the nearest person to get it. And it's like, that's not an appropriate way to achieve goals at all. And that's kind of how David is. It's just like, he wants something, and his go-to solution is to kill lots of people to get it. And he just doesn't care. So I think that's what makes him a great villain. So I like this movie. All right, I'd rate it about the same as Prometheus. And I like Prometheus, so I mean, I guess if you don't like Prometheus, you're probably not going to like this one. But is it as good as the first Alien? No. Is it as good as Aliens? No. Is it good? Yeah, it's good. So, like I say, it's a lot better than 3, 4 AVP and AVPR. All right, so whatever that's worth to you, but it's one of the good ones. All right, so if you care about this series, if you want to see a good alien movie that actually has some stuff to talk about and some cool ideas, go check this one out. All right, I highly recommend it. If you disagree, or if you agree, I want to hear your feedback. Leave some comments in the section below, all right? This is Good Screenwriting, and I'm Trevor Meyer. See you next time.